Hey there, folks. We're going to be taking a look at Roadcraft today. So, this is the latest title to come from Saber Interactive on the heels of Snowrunner Expeditions. I think it was called Snowrunner Expeditions. Maybe it was just called Expeditions. Wasn't my cup of tea, personally. It was largely based around scouting, in which, scouting isn't terrible, especially if you're a fan and you've played Snowrunner, Mudrunner in the past. Scouting is very important, but something about expeditions, it just didn't click, and I guess Saber kind of went into another direction and started making Roadcraft, which is sort of like, the way I look at it, like if Snowrunner and Construction Sim had a love child, a summer love child, and it kind of combines everything between those two games, even though they are from two totally different developers. But again, this is by Saber Interactive, so the same folks that made Snowrunner, Mudrunner in the past. It's going to be called Roadcraft, and it's going to release on May 20th. You can pre-order it now for $39.99, and they will have, like a lot of developers and a lot of other games, they will have other editions where you get free, well, not free, obviously, but an additional vehicle or paint or customization or, little minor things like that. If that's your jam, you can pay a little more and sometimes play early or get an extra paint job or, whatever the heck. But this right here is the demo. As you can see on the bottom of the screen, it says Steam Next Fest demo. So the Steam Next Fest, showcasing upcoming games, obviously by the title of the fest, has this, and it is now playable. I'm not totally sure how long it is playable, but it was playable since the 24th of February. And there's quite a bit you can do. So in this instance here, we are on the first map of the playable maps of 3, and they have them laid out to where it's easy, medium, and difficult. And they're really not that. It's just that each map and each difficulty just kind of has more you have to do. I don't know if you'd gauge that by, difficulty and how much you have to do, but I guess extra work is extra work, and therefore difficult if you want to look at it like that. But complete clarity, what I am running this on is a 4070 Ti 5800X, 32 gig system memory, 12 GB VRAM on 1440p native. So I don't have on DLSS or anything like that. I have it locked at 60 FPS, Windows 11, of course, sadly. Wish I could go back. But anyway, and it ran fine at 60 FPS. It did have those kind of hitching or stuttering deals where it would kind of load in scenery or a tile or something like that, so it seemed. I'm not sure how this engine really differs from the last engine, because they note on the store page that it is an all-new engine, rather than Snowrunner. And I think Expeditions, the other game, was a new engine as well. But it ran pretty smooth. I had it, rock solid 60 FPS, and it ran just fine. So the part of this mission is we get our scout here, and this spicy little redhead basically tells us what to do. I think she will continue to tell us what to do through the entirety of the demo missions. You've got to connect this power station to a concrete plant up the way. So you get there, and then you hop in this thing here, which is a tree clearer or cutter. And in Snowrunner's past, anything to do with trees, I absolutely abhorred. I'm sure there's a lot of you out there that are totally fine with it, and totally good with your fingers and controls and mouse and keyboard and all the 90 different things you got to do to cut trees and manipulate the machinery and things like that. But it's always been a pain in the ass, is what I'm beating around the bush to say. In this, it's not. This machine right here, it's not that difficult. It's actually pretty easy. It's got a scanner that shows you what trees you can and can't cut down, and that will come in handy later, because I ran into an issue a bit later in this playthrough here some trees that you cannot cut down, which very much sucked. So this is my first play here. I'm trying to figure things out. I'm like a newborn baby into the world. So you've got to cut trees down, and then you get in this chunker right here, your log truck with the crane essentially, and you got to clear this area out because you have to lay cable. You have to lay power cable from the power plant, which we're currently at, up to the concrete plant. So with this thing here, it's, you know, cranes in Snowrunner weren't that tough, but as you can see here on display from the video, it was a bit tough for me to figure this thing out. For some reason, you know, they changed the controls on some of the things that I feel like maybe they should have just stuck with from Snowrunner. You know, I feel like they did try to make things a bit easier to understand and control, but it was, you know, for me, it was actually the complete opposite. I felt like a complete dolt trying to figure this stuff out. As you can see here, I think I pick up one log in the span of like 30 minutes. But you got to load several up and then take them on to the plant. And then you get in this beast right here, which, by the way, the interior of these are pretty cool. I like the interior of these machines a lot better than in Snowrunner. Now, they may not look as sharp or as textured or something like that, but they just feel, I don't know, more realistic, more alive. The rain on the glass, the way the rain looks and everything, kind of has that cold, foggy look to it. But the interiors are very nice in this. The control for cranes, not so fun so far, but one of the things that is really, really badass for this, and a lot of you Snowrunner heads will realize right off the bat, is you can get rid of tree stumps. Yes, hell, that is amazing. You could chop down every tree stump, brush, everything, you name it. The thing with this game, and I'm assuming the reason they went with a new game engine overall, is apparently there is a permanent ground state. So like I'm driving over this terrain right now in this mud, and it will remain that way the entirety of your playthrough. You load in a day from now or a month from now, the terrain will look the same, which is kind of cool. I would also imagine that that's pretty CPU intensive. I don't really see this as being a GPU intensive game, as I don't think Snowrunner was either. It's more, you know, on the CPU side with things like that. But we finally got all the logs in the truck here. We're making our way up to this plant after driving in the ditch. Driving around overall isn't that tough. It doesn't feel, you know, as much of a kick in the balls, proverbially, as, you know, Snowrunner did. You don't get stuck every 2 seconds where it felt like an absolute slog to go, you know, 30 feet in Snowrunner. It's not too bad in this. And it kind of has to be that way, or at least now in the demo, because you don't have winches. The only time that you get a winch is in the Scout, which kind of sucks. So if you're stuck or you tip one of these bad boys over, you got to bring something else, you know, to fix it. So I ended up picking up too many logs for the demo, and it took the 3 that it wanted, and it left 2. So we got the spicy redhead telling us what to do next. We've got to take this generator truck or power truck, which a lot of you guys that have played Snowrunner in the past obviously will notice. A lot of these vehicles are pretty much exactly the same. They do have a very not so awesome, you know, livery or paint scheme that you cannot change, that I figured out anyway in the demo yet. So they all kind of look the same, sadly. But anywho, now you got to get in this thing and basically take it over to the cement plant. So here we are on our way. We're just kind of skipping around here, and this is one of the first times that I get stuck. The tiniest little puddle, and here's my dumbass thinking, oh, I can get right through that, no problem. There were problems indeed. I got stuck, tried putting it in low. I think some of these trucks have locked, you know, all-wheel drive and diff lock, or 4x4 anyway, not all-wheel drive. It's not a Subaru. But it still didn't really do much at all. And that's one of the things I'd like to touch on as well with this game so far. And it is a demo. Who knows if it'll change when it comes to full release. But a lot of things are simplified, which, you know, could be for the better. I don't know. I don't really have an opinion on it so far. But as follows, some really weird things going on here with Roadcraft. One, no fuel. These vehicles don't take any fuel. You can't run out. You don't have to worry about that. Two, there's no gearing. You know, you can't really choose manual or choose your types of gearing if you would like. It's basically an automatic, but you can select low gear and then diff. So the diff 3, I guess we'll talk about final, is you can turn it on and just haul ass. And anybody that knows anything about 4x4 locking a diff, you know, you try and go down the road, it's going to cause problems at any kind of speed, you know, that's not relatively slow. In this, you can kind of just leave 4x4 and your diff locked perpetually and just keep going, and it does nothing. So they simplified that in a very big manner, which, you know, whatever. I guess it is what it is. It's a lot of things do seem simplified, but to be fair, this is not Snowrunner. This is Roadcraft. While it may look like Snowrunner and may be from the developers that made Snowrunner, it is not. I think they did obviously take a lot of, you know, artistic and gameplay notes from Snowrunner, obviously largely built off the game. I'd say a solid 80%, and then did other stuff with the 20%. You know, it is a different game, so some things are different by and large. Another thing is the map. So here's the kind of new map you're faced with. You have these 3D clouds until you kind of go through it or scout it out or reconnoiter it, if you will. Until then, it stays pretty clouded, like a lot of your RPG games and things like that. But the UI I'm not a fan of. It looks kind of corny. It looks very cheap. It almost looks like AI made it, and it looks like something that you'd see in like a mobile game for little Billy, you know, playing on his mom's tablet, learning colors and numbers and things like that. I'm not a fan of the UI and the icon and just the way the artwork there looks. But again, it's early. Who knows if that'll change? I doubt it will. This game seems pretty fleshed out. Anyway, we made it to the cement plant with the generator. Now we have to lay cable from the power station to the cement plant. And this is one of the poor aspects of the game that I found personally. It doesn't explain things very well. Now, I'm not saying a game has to hold your hand like a little baby and lead you all the way along the path. That's not what I'm getting at. There's literally zero kind of tutorial here. You get a couple of pop-ups, and then you've got what's called a codex, which is in a lot of games, obviously, that kind of tell you things as well, which I did look at numerous times. But here, my dumbass takes this cable layer from where you start all the way to the concrete plant just to get there, to figure out I can do nothing with it. So I ended up having to take this thing all the way back to the power station. That being said, this is a tracked vehicle. There were no tracked vehicles in Snowrunner. This thing is pretty badass. It feels amazing to operate like tracked vehicles. It's got that kind of quick jerkiness, stopping and going, and the quick rotation left and right. It feels really nice operating tracked equipment, and the way it deforms the terrain as you're going along. You know, it's kind of a weird setup. It's just an old truck with some tracks on it. It's a bit of a mishmash vehicle, but it is fun nonetheless. I mean, there weren't any of these in Snowrunner as far as I can remember, unless it was a mod. But anyway, we get all the way over here, and you can see the red on the ground. That means I cannot dig. This thing is a cable layer. You have to lay cable, obviously, to power the concrete station. I can't dig. I'm sitting here scratching my head. I can't figure out what's going on. I looked at the codex over and over again, and I'm not gonna lie, I got on the interweb and I googled, and sure enough, tons of other folks out there having the same issue playing this demo. How in the hell do you supply power to the concrete plant? And luckily I found it. You basically start at the power station, which makes sense, right? That makes sense. And as you can see, the ground is blue, which means you can dig and lay. The game doesn't really explain this that well, and Snowrunner was sort of like that to a degree as well, where you kind of just had to figure things out. But you know, to me in Snowrunner, it was a bit easier to figure things out. It was just a lot of work you generally had to do. So anyway, did figure it out. We're back at square one here, finally digging. It's a slow slog with this thing all the way to the concrete plant. And again, you know, I overthink things sometimes, and my ass kept taking the same route that I was scouting from here up to the concrete plant. And so I went the same exact way with this thing, and I'm 110% certain you are not supposed to go this way with the cable layer. But I did anyway, because I'm a hard-headed SOB, and this is just how I think and do things, whether it's in game or IRL. Sadly, this is the case. You can go off to the left, which is a flatter area, and kind of weave your way up around the concrete plant. But I ran into a bunch of trees, massive trees, which was interesting because there weren't trees that big in Snowrunner. Trees always felt really small. I got the tree cutter, went to the trees, can't cut them down. Absolutely can't do anything to them. So only some of the trees you can cut. So that was like another hour wasted getting that thing back. And then I get here and figure out, okay, that's as far as I can bring the cable. I'm assuming because there's concrete here. It's a concrete pad, you know, or asphalt anyway. So I had to dig around the edge of the building over to where this thing is right here, the very edge of it that kind of juts out from the fence. I am 1000% certain, again, that's not how you're supposed to do that, but that's how I did it, because I'm very backwards sometimes, and I got it done though, and that's all that matters, right? It doesn't matter how you do it, you just do it, get it done. So that is that complete. And that is the first demo, or what they called easy. You can see your little pre-order bonus there, which is like a dump truck, a tracked dump truck. This is the second one, which involves a sandstorm. And this is probably, for me at least, the bread and butter of the demo overall. This is probably the funnest map because you actually build a road. And that, by and large, is what the game's all about, right? It's called Roadcraft. And it was the funnest for me, the actual operation of building the road and then getting the convoy to take the road from A to B, etc., etc. So the deal with this map is it's something along the lines of Sandstorm, cue the song, ravages the area. And again, you start in a scout. You got to figure things out. You got to go to the objective area over in the corner of the map, and here I am trying to figure out why I'm not going, and the parking brake is on as per usual. So you got to get over there and clean the area up, because there is stuff strewn about everywhere, and it's a bit of a pointless task at the time, but then you'll see again later as to why you have to do it. But you get to operate some heavy machinery, which again is pretty fun and always very nice. I mean, driving, is fun too, especially within Snowrunner, but in this you get to operate some cranes and things like that. And it's a different map. This map looks more akin to like the Expeditions game or something like that. It's a desert, it doesn't look like Michigan or Wisconsin from Snowrunner. But you've got these three areas that you got to clear here that just has crap all in the way. You got to get out of the way for the trucks that are going to come through later, your convoy, as they're known. And you've got two crane trucks. You've got Big Chunkus, and then you've got Little Chunker over to the right there. We, of course, first get in the big one. And there is so much crap you got to move. And so I just park it up and get to work. Now, with the tree equipment, it's kind of the same deal with operating cranes. It wasn't amazing in Snowrunner, but you kind of got used to it and you kind of figured it out. You still made some incorrect movements and things like that. But the way the controls are now, it's just a little bit different, and it seems more of a hindrance than a helping. Um, so, you know, I did struggle with a lot of this stuff. Again, this is maybe my third hour into playing the game. But one of the things of note that is pretty cool about Roadcraft that they did change is your hoist or winching points. You can actually stabilize your load, as you can see here picking up this small container, is you can put a hoist or winch on each corner and not just in the middle, which is, you know, a bit ridiculous and unrealistic, as it would just kind of flail around everywhere. And you can actually change that as well. So if you do want to have just one hoist or one winch point versus four, or you could put them on like an end of the container, I think, or something like that. So again, this task is a bit confusing, because it's like, okay, you got to move this stuff out of the yellow square. Where do you move it? It doesn't tell you. So I'm sitting there with that thing, having trouble, you know, having to move each individual thing. I'm like, this is going to take forever. So I go get in the blade boy, the grader. This thing right here is probably one of my favorite things that I drove in the entire demo. Right here. So I just go get this thing because it's sitting right down the road as part of the Roadworks crew, and I take this sumbitch up to the plant, and I just start going to town, just pushing everything out of the way, because I figured, why the hell not? It doesn't say you have to do it a particular way, which is kind of nice. So I just figure, what's the easiest, you know, least time consuming way that you can do it, and this is what I figured out right here personally. So I just got into this thing and went to town, because they don't really tell you, you know, where to place any of this trash. It's kind of ridiculous. You know, they tell you to move all this stuff, but they don't really tell you where to move it. So you just have to move it out of the way. I mean, it could become a hindrance later on when you're trying to you know, come through the same area with whatever vehicle you're in, and then you've got stuff right in front of you. But anyway, so I get in this thing. This is one of the easier things to operate, and we'll see a lot more of this guy later when we're building the actual road here in just a minute. But I just get in this thing and go to town. You can change the blade. You can, of course, raise or lower it. You can change the angle of it as if you're grading a road, because, well, that's what you use it for a bit later. But I just look around and think, all right, what the heck am I going to push first? You can push just about everything with this thing, and I think we start off first with these yellow pipes over here, and we'll get to town with that. I also noticed the sounds. So the sounds in Snowrunner were generally pretty poor. Like, nothing sounded like a diesel or turbo diesel or anything like that. They always just kind of had these real thin, tinny or muted sounds. In Roadcraft, you know, some of the sounds are a lot better. They actually sound like turbocharged diesel engines. They've got that kind of whistle and fluttering and girthy sound to them for the most part, but not overpowering to where it's, you know, just annoying to hear over and over again. So anyway, we got done with that, clearing that area up. Your next task is to build the road here, which is what we get on. The bread and butter of the game, the bread and butter of this machine right here. So it starts by showing you where the road needs to be placed. Obviously, this blue line here, it almost looks like a racetrack or something like that. But you got to get the rocks out of the way. At least I don't think it makes you, but I think it would be wise to get them out of the way, because again, it doesn't really tell you how to do this. You have to rely on the codex. So you go into the menu, look at the codex, look at road building, and it tells you the 5 phases of road building. Now, it's just common sense, right? You're going to need to move these massive-ass boulders out of the way of where you're going to build a road, but it doesn't actually say to do that. So, again, with some of the tutorial stuff, I feel like it could be a lot better. So we got that stuff out of the way. Next, we've got to dump sand. Again, I demonstrate this very, very poorly. I've got our sand truck, our dump truck, our tipper here. And you've got to just dump a ton of sand until this blue line turns orange in its entirety. One of the things I messed up on is I left the tipper door consistently open. So every time I would refill it with sand, which by the way is nice, you can see your little sand pit over there, your sand machine, you can refill on the go. So it's not like you're going to dump, 100 foot of sand and then you have to go get more and then come right back, because that would be a pain in the ass, to put it bluntly. That would not be fun. I don't think anybody would enjoy that. I'm sure there's a few that would. But at least with this, you can kind of just get it refilled on the go and just keep dumping. And obviously, it's not very realistic, but it is a game, and the parameters of the game and the way it dumps the dirt and how much dirt or sand, in this case, you need, it doesn't do it very well. It dumps a ton at once, and you need a lot of it. So it's just easier to refill on the go. So I am totally cool with that. We finally get this thing done. Got to hop back in the graders. You can see now the tracks in front of us are orange, which means it's pretty much good to go. And we're on the later phases of getting the road built. You lower your blade and go to town. What's cool about this and a lot of the operation of these vehicles is there's different types of operation that they can do. Some of it is automated, like this is greater control, so it lowers your blade. It'll tilt it to like one side, or you can do it totally manual if you want and tilt it side to side at a different height. But it's got a couple of options, which is nice because options, of course, are always nice. So we got that thing graded and pretty much good to go. The next is the actual asphalt laying, which is another cool piece of machinery that we'll get in here in a minute, which is, I think, second to last. But I think I did miss a couple of spots here that I had to kind of just go back over to flatten it back out. But this isn't a kind of, all for one, one for all kind of deal. This, like, I've seen other people play this, and I've seen screenshots. The road will not always look like this. It is 100% up to you and how you do this task. How you grade, how you do your fill, things like that, and what the road will look like. This is why my road looks like total ass, because I did the job like ass. So you get, out of it what you put into it, right? I didn't do that well, and it's just the nature of the beast. So we finally got it graded out. Go back to the codex, try to figure out, okay, what's next? Because I have no clue what I'm doing, save for the codex. At least this kind of explains some things a bit easier than some other aspects of the game, like the cable laying, the power cable. So now we hop into this puppy right here, the bunker, as it's nicknamed, the asphalt layer. This thing's pretty interesting as well, easy to control. It's got some auto actions that are done with the actual paving itself. You still have to drive the machine. Don't get me wrong. It's not automatic in the sense that it's going to do everything for you, because, therefore there would be no game there really. But just another machine that's pretty easy to operate. The interior looks really good again. It just looks old and ratty and rusted. Just some old machinery. But yeah, we're going to lay some asphalt and flatten some asphalt on sand, which, I guess that's how they do it in whatever third world country this is that we're supposed to be in here. But this one takes a little bit more time. You definitely want to make sure you kind of keep it in between the lines to a degree. I did miss a spot that I ended up having to go back over, as I'm just kind of weaving all over the place here, because it's another tracked vehicle, so it's got that quick, kind of left to right action. But overall, pleasant experience to drive, as with a lot of this machinery and a lot of the machinery in Snowrunner. And while I said it's kind of a summer love child of construction sim and Snowrunner, that's where I feel like Snowrunner always did it better. It's a truck and machine based game, and operating those and driving them around always felt a lot better to me than in construction sim, for example. So I feel like it does that a bit better in that aspect anyway. So let's get that thing out of the way. Next up is the roller. I know, I still call it a steamroller, like I'm 4 years old, and it's not steam powered. And I don't think any of them have been steam powered since the 1940s. But it's a steam roller or a roller, and it's got front and rear rollers, and not just one or the other. This thing was pretty fun as well. It's even got some nice little ambient sounds that go along with it. You can see it kind of just, shimmying all over the place because it's such a rigid machine on a, a concrete and metal wheel, essentially. There's no suspension whatsoever. So little things like that, if you pay attention to them, are pretty neat because they are there. And you can actually see the asphalt or the tarmac being flattened to a nice buttery flatness as well, which is pretty cool to look at right behind the tractor. You can mix between what they call like cinematic view and just your free cam view as well. But this was probably the funnest operation, that I had done in the game overall. The game's called Roadcraft, and it lets you do a little bit of this, and I kind of hope there's more of it in the actual full release game, because there's a lot of stuff where it's just basically Snowrunner with some road craft elements added. Now, I get you can't just have a game about, making and paving roads and things like that, but, stuff that's more like this, where you need to use a certain fleet of machinery in unison or one after the other. And again, this is where things can get really spicy playing multiplayer or with friends via co-op, stuff like this. Whereas in SnowRunner, I had some fun playing with friends, but SnowRunner was always kind of a thing where it's like you're not really doing anything together playing with friends or multiplayer. One of you's on one side of the map, the other's on the other. You don't see each other. You can talk to each other over comms, sure, but it's like you're just kind of playing your own separate games. I feel like this could change that a bit with the way some of the jobs are set up and the machinery and things like that you'll get to use. So hopefully that's the case, or you're actually working, in tandem with a buddy or someone online via multiplayer. But I think that will do it for the Roadcraftian bit of everything. The next job, just like the cable laying, took some doing to figure out. So the next thing that you have to do on the second map, or the second demo within the demo, is do a convoy. And this is another thing that I had a lot of trouble with. I just, I tend to overthink things. My slight OCD mind does this with just about everything, even day-to-day life. But it took me a minute to figure out what the hell it meant and how to plot an actual route. Because, coming from SnowRunner, I was thinking it was just markers where you plot your route and you just follow the flags or the markers via in-game driving. And so I had no clue what was going on here, so I went to the codex, read that. I still didn't fully understand it, and I went back on, Googled what was going on, and again, saw numerous posts, online, Discord, on Steam, Reddit, yada, yada, people with the same issues. So, I don't feel so alone, thankfully. But eventually I figured it out, and once you kind of do it once, it's, one of those things like riding a bike or tying your shoes. But you set up a convoy because you built the road, therefore you building the road means the route is complete between a distribution point and a receiving point, which these trucks are now going to, because they're going to kind of resupply an area that had been devastated to kind of get it going again. So you set the route up, and then a fleet or an army of trucks will actually follow said route. You can see I left all the road equipment in the middle of the road like a complete idiot, and so I did, chart around that, thankfully. And the AI trucks that, that follow the actual route did it flawlessly. They went around it. I tried to get in front of them here just so I could kind of watch everything and be the reconnaissance or the scout, if you will. And they were all going around those trucks perfectly fine, which was pretty cool. So I just kind of babysat them and kept an eye on them all the way to the plant, which we're going up to here. And this is one of the things that I was worried about, because I was thinking early on, I was like, this is going to come back to bite me in the ass when you're cleaning this area up. And I just left stuff everywhere, absolutely everywhere. So again, I plotted the route around I was like, all right, we'll move this car out of the way just so these trucks can get by a bit easier. And we'll just go up in here and wait for them. Now, I'm assuming in the fully fleshed out game, this could be a lot tougher. And I'm not sure how it would work. Say one gets stuck. I don't know if they reset. I don't know if you have to tow them out or how that's going to work. But if it's any kind of terrain that's super muddy or it's a water crossing or something like that, and say they get stuck, for example, not totally sure how that's going to work. But in this instance, they are working absolutely fine. Again, you can tell that one looks a little bit drunk. Maybe he's had too much schnapps. But it does go around the pipes just fine. And then up into the little garage over there. There's the second truck coming in there. So I'll kind of follow this one. I was also just driving around here to see what's going on. I was observing like a curious house cat, you know, watching every move that you do. There's also the crane that I left in the middle of the road, which is not very wise. But this support vehicle is going to go into the appropriately named truck shack. It doesn't quite have the turning radius, so it actually backs up and goes right back in again. Which is pretty cool. I mean, I don't remember seeing anything like that in Snowrunner. To see vehicles kind of rolling around of their own volition, their own mind. Which is pretty neat, because that's one of the things I feel like, you know, Snowrunner was always lacking. It's just life. You know, every now and then you'd have a map where you'd see a guy in the middle of the lake fishing, you know, he never moved, or you'd see wolves, but if you got too close they disappear. It was just hardly ever any life to a lot of Snowrunner, which sucks. So this adds a bit more. It's a bit more organic, like there's some stuff going on. It would be nice to see that just in general. Maybe here we are at the third and final map, which is not in a desert. A lot of it's energy based, a lot of pipelines and things like that. And that's the name of the game here on this one. You've got to repair a lot of pipe. As you can see, it's a pretty good sized map. It's got some water features. It's definitely got some elevation, some slightly mountainous terrain that you've got to go up and down. But this one could be a bit tricky. And I'm actually still working on this one, so this is just the footage that I happened to play yesterday and capture. Mainly because when I did play it, initially my computer decided to shit itself and invalidate the recording file that I had going on at the time. So I basically had to restart, so I restarted kind of halfway through. So you start scouting. I found out what I needed to get, so I get in this truck to go get it, and I'm trying to leave the base that it's in, and the stupidest gates on planet Earth exist in front of me now. They only open inward, as if it were a house front door. For whatever reason, these gates were closed. When I initially left here in the scout, they were open. So, the issue, as I mentioned early on with the winching, is you don't have a winch. So far, I don't know if you'll be able to buy any. You can't do any customization in the demo as of yet. But this sumbitch has got a crane. On that crane, there is a winch. And so I winched the doors open. I don't know if you're supposed to do that. It was the best thing I could come up with. But the issue was keeping them static as I drove through. And luckily, they did stay put. So, yeah, I'm not sure why they were closed or why they only open inward. It's kind of stupid, especially since you can't really get in first person to like open them, you know. I didn't really see any other button to open them as well. Anyway, we're on the road, and it's a nice looking map. This is probably the best looking map that I saw overall. The first area that we come up to here over the bridge is a static crane, which there are two of on this map, I think. And you actually get to operate these things. Sadly, the footage of me operating them is dead and gone. That was the corrupted file from my computer shitting itself. But you have to clear a bunch of stuff out of this yard off of this river here. I guess it's sort of like a transload facility to a degree. And you got to get that big piece of pipe to repair some of the piping. So that's what I'm doing here with this truck. But the stuff like that, operating that giant crane, was fun as hell, especially in the first person mode. I haven't seen a game that's done anything better, even, you know, harkening back to Construction Sim, for example. That was fun and it felt nice. And then you've got some other cranes such as this, or like the logging cranes, which just feel horrible. They don't gel well, you know, at least for me anyway. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are, you know, totally fine with moving around stuff like this and have no issues whatsoever. So essentially we've got to take this thing and fix the pipeline. But to a degree, that is a lot of what goes on in this demo. It's sort of like, you know, it fleshes out the way that you're supposed to tackle certain jobs and scout certain routes and clear certain routes, i.e. trees, and get rid of stumps and things like that, and build bridges. So, you know, to a degree, it kind of does that well, the demo overall of what you're supposed to do and the main purpose of the game. But visually, the game looks like Expeditions and Snowrunner. Some things look fantastic, like the water here. You'll actually see waves if you're driving through the water as your truck is pushing through it. You can see raindrops on the water itself. That looks amazeballs. That looks fantastic. Some of the best looking stuff like that in any game that I've ever seen. Visually, I feel like some of the things like shading and texturing are a bit lower than they were in Snowrunner. I felt like Snowrunner looked really great, especially on max settings. But overall, by and large, it's about the same as Snowrunner and Expeditions. Seems a bit easier to navigate terrain, you know, again, because it's not Snowrunner or Mudrunner, so you don't get stuck as often. You still have to plot your routes. You still can very much get stuck. You can still very much get tipped over. It just doesn't seem as tough. I don't know what they're going to do with the tires within Snowrunner, for example, just to base it on that, because, well, they are the Snowrunner developer, and it's a lot like Snowrunner. You know, your tires have a lot to do with, you know, your different types of terrains and things like that. I absolutely love that you can get rid of stumps, and that the worlds you play in this are a living world, and they stay the way they are. So you get rid of a stump, that stump is gone, unlike in Snowrunner, which would be the bane of many players. You know, same with giant boulders in the road that would reappear over and over again. You can actually move those bastards out of the way and they will stay gone. So they did listen to the community from Snowrunner on that front, which is pretty badass. I do enjoy that a lot. We've got tracked vehicles now, so tracked like tanks, you know, a tank. And they're fun to operate. They feel pretty legit and look pretty legit in the way they turn. Interiors look good. I feel like the interiors of vehicles look a bit better. While not as detailed, they just look more cozy and realistic overall. The gearing is a bit more simplistic, as well as, you know, there's no damage, which is kind of an odd choice. It does make things a bit easier, no fuel usage and things like that. And speaking of damage, at this point right here when I'm about to deliver this thing, just like in Snowrunner fashion, when you're almost at the point of contact, you tip over, run out of gas, something happens. You can't get out of it. There was no way in hell that I was going to reset this thing back at base. So I used the trusty boom arm, just like in Snowrunner, to get out of sticky situations. And look at that, I was able to push myself up and deliver this thing. The winch controls are not great. I feel like that's a big step backward as far as controlling the winch. Luckily, I didn't have to do too much of that. And the UI, I feel like the UI looks like crap. I don't like the icons and things like that. But overall, the game was actually pretty fun. I had a pleasurable experience playing this for several hours yesterday. I really enjoyed myself. And the demo is available now for anyone to go and play, so you don't have to be a, you know, someone with connections to get the early access demo or anything like that. I'll link it down below where you can go and play it now for yourself. But I am looking forward to this on May 20th, which I will be playing a lot of. That's my look at it. I hope you enjoyed it, guys. Found it somewhat informative. Thanks for watching. Take care.